r/AskReddit. Serious. What is the creepiest thing you have experienced that you still think about to this day? My brother had a party in college at his place on campus. They had trailers that were on campus and were a part of housing. There were a bunch of parties that night in that area. I was there for a little bit, but was still in HS and had hockey practice in the morning, so had to get home earlier. My brother and his buddy were on the porch late at night, like 3 to 4 am, when in the distance, in the dark, they saw someone randomly running through the night with a football. My brother's buddy even yelled out, "Run Forrest, run." Next morning the police knocked on everyone's door to interview the people who lived in the area. Apparently a student was decapitated and the body was found near the campus, but the head was missing. There was a massive search, and a few weeks later, they were looking at the track and field complex behind where my brother lived, and they found the head when emptying a porta potty at the track. My brother is fairly certain the random guy in the dark running with the football was actually the guy running with the head. Edit. I said it was a student who was killed. I meant to say it was a student who did it. The victim was a 13-year-old female. On a family vacation, when I was a kid, renting a beach condo, the unit next door was a regular residence, and we met the family. Nice people. They were leaving at the end of the week for their own trip, but the daughter had to work one more overnight shift as a nurse. The dad and the younger kids left that day, and the mother and daughter were going to leave the next morning and catch up with them. That morning, as we were packing up our own stuff to go home, we started hearing sirens out on the road in front of the condos. There were several emergency vehicles outside, and eventually an air revoc helicopter landed on the road and took off with a gurney rolled out of the unit next to us. A while later, we got the story. The daughter had come home from her shift and found the mother beaten to death with a hammer or something similar. We hadn't heard or seen anything, even though we shared a wall. The creepiest part was that the officers found that the killer had accessed the house by the back porch door, facing the beach. The bedroom me and my brothers were sleeping in was down on the ground floor, with the same porch door leading out to the beach, only a few feet away from that same door and only separated by a waist-high rail. Talking about it later, we weren't even sure we had locked the door that night. I lived in a quiet tiny military town for a few years. I'm from a big city, so you just lock your doors. Husband's unit deploys, and with that, 10 of the 12 units in our building are empty. It was me and one guy left. I locked my door religiously, but I remember one night I had come home and had stuff in my hands, so I just shut the door. A while later I heard people talking, so I got up just to check the door, immediately locked it, and went back to whatever I was doing. Maybe an hour later I hear someone try my front door, knock, and evidently walk away. I had a friend whose husband was not deployed. They lived in the building across from us. Backyard that faced our front door. Called her and was like, "Hey, what's up? Is there someone by my door?" She said no, but her husband was gonna drive around the building to make sure no one was messing around out back. Back porches had no wall and ours backed up to the woods. All was good. Next day I run into my neighbor and he's upset and tells me someone robbed him last night. He had gone to the store and must have forgot to lock his door, so people walked in, unlocked the back door, drove around back, and loaded every big piece of furniture he had. When I was in college, 20 plus years ago, I had a desk chair that was on rollers. The kind where the pedestal ends in a 5-armed star with a roller at each end. The arms of the star were made of hard-formed plastic and were pretty thick. I was up very late one night cramming for a final and went to bed for no more than an hour or so to take a nap. When I got up I went back and sat in the chair and immediately realized something was wrong. All 5 of the hard plastic arms were warped and bent at almost 90 degrees, all in the same direction. It certainly wasn't like that an hour prior, when I left it. Again, this was hard, brittle, thick plastic. It shouldn't bend. It would just snap under enough force. I suppose maybe, if you heated it up to soften it enough, you could reshape it. But how could that have happened? I lived alone. Doors were locked. It'd be the most bizarre prank in the world to break into somebody's apartment with a blowtorch or something to reshape their chair legs. I kept that chair for years and years, even though it was now basically unusable, because I thought that one day I'd be staring at it and the answer would come to me. I have absolutely zero belief in anything supernatural and nothing else bizarre has ever happened to me. But I think about this constantly. My grandma had Alzheimer's and maybe dementia when she lived with us. Her room was also like right down the hallway from mine, so it was really common for me to be woken up in the night to her laughing, screaming, or talking. One night things were different. I could hear her talking and someone responding. I got up to take a close look, and I noticed when I was getting out of bed my dog looked like something was wrong, which was weird to me. I went up to the door to hear things better. She was paralyzed on her right side, so I know this was just my mom coming to help her with something. But the responding voice was a male voice. My dad didn't live with us, and I don't have any brothers, nor did this sound like her own voice at all. My first thought was that it was my uncle, but why would my uncle be at my house? If he was, then there was something wrong with my grandma, because he would only come this late when there was an emergency. I also would have heard him coming through the front door. I put myself against the wall in a way that I could see into my grandma's room, but anyone in the room couldn't see me. Unless they were at the room door, I couldn't see anyone except my grandma's feet. I got close enough to make out what they were saying now. But what made this weirder is that my grandma wasn't speaking English and neither was the person they were speaking Farsi. This was the conversation I heard. Voice: they have been treating you well. Grandma: yes, they have been treating me very well. Voice: who is the guy in the hallway? Grandma: that is my grandson, has a good kid. Voice: I think the dog sees me. At this point I freaked out and made my way back to my room. I thought I was in a nightmare or something, and I wanted to wake up. My first thought was that I could pinch myself. That didn't work, so I tried to poke myself with my knife. I did it pretty hard because it left a mark in my hand that stayed for a few days. I tried to go back to sleep, not listen, but I couldn't. I watched the sunlight come up through my window with this very uneasy feeling that I was being watched. My grandma lived for another 5 years with us and a few more minor weird things happened, but this one always stuck with me. TLDR: my grandma had a conversation in her native language with something in her room. In 2010, I was hired to be an au pair for a family in France. I traveled from Texas to Toulouse with a connection in Paris. While in Paris, I had to get my checked baggage, go through customs, then recheck my bags for Toulouse. I didn't speak a lick of French, and it was my first time traveling alone. I was 20. I had a horrible time finding the gate information for my flight. There was a young man in a uniform with credentials around his neck. He offered to help me find my gate and I assumed he worked for the airport. He found my flight and told me how to get to my gate. Then he told me I would have to wait to go through security because I was really early for my flight and they wouldn't let me through. He asked if I had ever been to Paris before, and I said no. I had like 7 hours to kill, and he told me that he was about to get off work and had a second job as a limo driver. I was a little intrigued because I was single and he was French and cute and helpful. He offered to take me around Paris. We could go for lunch and he'd bring me back for my flight. Luckily, Taken had just come out and I, for the first time in my life, knew what sex trafficking was. So I actually listened to the little voice in my head that told me to not be polite and declined the offer. He still insisted on staying close by. I finally let him buy me a packet of cookies for a snack. After chatting for a little while, I knew to give fake info at this point because I was a little freaked out. I told him I needed to use the restroom. A woman followed me in. She informed me that he did not work for the airport and that I needed to find a police officer right away. She and her husband had overheard parts of our convo and knew he was up to no good. When I came out, he was gone, and the woman's husband was talking to security. They let me go ahead to my gate and told me not to leave with anyone. I'm sure I was almost sold into sex slavery. Please support our channel. We upload daily quality videos. Leave a like and comment for the divine YouTube algorithm to help us grow. Also, subscribe like a boss. Stay safe and lock your doors, humans. Love, peace and bubblegum.